The rain came down like bullets on the streets of Busan, and Ayana Reid was lost. Again. She squinted through the windshield of her rental car, trying to make sense of the Korean street signs that blurred in the downpour. Her phone had died 20 minutes ago. Her grandmother's bakery was supposed to be around here somewhere, tucked between the glittering high-rises and the old neighborhoods that refused to die. But everything looked the same in the dark. Everything looked wrong. She should have stayed in Atlanta. Should have let the lawyers handle the estate. Should have ignored the letter that brought her halfway across the world to claim a building she'd never seen from a grandmother she barely remembered. But here she was. Alone. Soaking wet. And about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The black Mercedes came out of nowhere. Ayana slammed on the brakes, but the wet road had other plans. Her small rental car skidded, spun, and crashed rear-first into the luxury vehicle with a sickening crunch of metal and glass. Time stopped. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Steam rose from both hoods. The rain kept falling. Then the driver's door of the Mercedes opened. A man stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in all black despite the heat. His face was hidden beneath the shadow of an umbrella, but Ayana could feel his eyes on her. Cold, calculating, deadly. She should have stayed in the car. Should have called the police. Should have done literally anything else. But Ayana had never been good at doing what she should. She opened her door and stumbled out into the rain, already apologizing in broken Korean she'd learned from a phone app during the flight. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see you. I'll pay for everything. I have insurance." The man said nothing. He just stood there, umbrella in hand, watching her like a predator watches prey. Then his trunk popped open. Ayana's words died in her throat. Money. Stacks and stacks of cash, bundled in plastic wrap. And beneath the money, long black cases that could only contain one thing. Her eyes went wide. She took a step back. That's when she heard the sound from the alley. It came sharp and final. Ayana's head snapped toward the noise just in time to see a man fall to his knees in the narrow space between buildings. 3 other men stood over him. One of them looked directly at her. She ran. Her feet slapped against the wet pavement as she sprinted down the street, her heart in her throat, her lungs burning. She could hear shouts behind her in rapid Korean. Footsteps. Getting closer. She didn't make it to the end of the block. A hand grabbed her arm and spun her around with brutal efficiency. She found herself face to face with the man from the Mercedes. Up close, he was even more terrifying. Sharp jawline. Dark eyes that held no warmth. A scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He looked like death in a tailored suit. "You saw nothing," he said in perfect English, his voice low and dangerous. Ayana's mouth went dry. "I won't tell anyone. I swear. I'll forget this ever happened. Please." His grip tightened on her arm. "You're American." It wasn't a question. "Yes. I'm just here to settle my grandmother's estate. I'm nobody. I don't know anything about," she gestured vaguely toward the alley. "About whatever that was." The man studied her for a long moment. Rain dripped from his black hair onto his face, but he didn't seem to notice. Finally, he pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking in rapid Korean too fast for Ayana to follow. When he hung up, he looked at her with something that might have been regret. Or might have been hunger. "What's your name?" "Ayana." "Ayana Reid." "Well, Ayana Reid." He released her arm but didn't step back. "You just became a very big problem for me." Before she could ask what that meant, a black van pulled up beside them. 2 men in suits jumped out. They didn't point weapons at her, but the threat was clear in the way they positioned themselves on either side. The man with the scar opened the van's door. "Get in." "No." Ayana's voice shook, but she held her ground. "I'm not getting in that van." "I'll scream." You'll what?" He stepped closer, invading her space, his breath warm against her rain-cold skin. "Scream for the police? Tell them you witnessed Kim Jae-hoon's men handle business? Tell them about the money in my trunk." He smiled, and it was the cruelest thing Ayana had ever seen. "Go ahead. Scream. See who comes to save you. Kim Jae-hoon." The name echoed in her head like a death sentence. She'd heard it whispered in the airport, seen it in Korean news articles she couldn't fully read. The ghost of Busan. The youngest mafia boss in South Korea's underworld. The man who controlled everything from the ports to the politicians. And she'd just rear-ended his car. Ayana's knees went weak. Please. I have a friend waiting for me. If I don't come back. May Park. 23 years old. Lives above your grandmother's bakery on Dongbeek Street. Jae-hoon tilted his head. She's probably asleep right now. Probably dreaming. Probably doesn't know how easily dreams turn to ash. The threat was clear. Crystal clear. Ayana got in the van. The door slammed shut behind her. Jae-hoon climbed in beside her, and the van pulled away from the scene like it had never happened. Through the tinted windows, Ayana watched Busan blur past, the neon signs, the late-night food stalls, the mountains rising dark against the darker sky. She was going to die tonight. She knew it with the same certainty she knew her own name. Where are you taking me? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Jae-hoon didn't look at her. Home. Your home or mine? Does it matter? No. It really didn't. Before we continue, can I ask you a question? Where in the world are you watching from? Comment below because we'd love to know how far these stories travel, and hit that subscribe button. The compound sat on a cliff overlooking Haeundae Beach, but there was nothing beautiful about it. High walls topped with cameras. Armed guards at every gate. The main house rose like a fortress against the night sky, all sharp angles and tinted glass that reflected nothing back. Ayana's stomach dropped as the van pulled through the gates. Jae-hoon hadn't spoken during the entire drive. He'd made 3 phone calls in Korean, each one clipped and cold, while Ayana sat frozen beside him, trying not to think about May sleeping peacefully above the bakery. Trying not to think about her mother back in Atlanta who'd begged her not to make this trip. Trying not to think about what she'd witnessed in the alley. The van stopped. Jae-hoon got out first, then extended his hand to her like a gentleman. Like he hadn't just kidnapped her. Ayana ignored his hand and climbed out on her own. Her legs shook, but she forced herself to stand tall. If she was going to die, she'd die with dignity. This way. Jae-hoon walked toward the main entrance. When Ayana didn't follow, he stopped and turned. You can walk, or my men can carry you. Choose. She walked. Inside, the house was cold. Marble floors. Minimalist furniture. Art on the walls that probably cost more than Ayana's entire life. Everything was white and black and gray, like color was a weakness Jae-hoon couldn't afford. An older woman appeared from a side hallway. She wore a simple black dress and her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She bowed to Jae-hoon, said something in Korean, then looked at Ayana with eyes that held pity. This is Mrs. Shin, Jae-hoon said. She manages the house. She'll show you to your room. My room? Ayana's voice cracked. I'm not staying here. You can't just. I can. Jae-hoon finally looked at her, really looked at her, and Ayana felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. And I will. You have 2 choices, Ayana Reed. You can accept what's about to happen and make this easy. Or you can fight, and I'll make sure your friend May pays the price for your stubbornness. Ayana's hands clenched into fists. What do you want from me? Everything. He moved closer, and Ayana forced herself not to step back. I'm in the middle of a war. The Yakuza want my territory. The police want my head. My own men question my authority because I'm young and they think I'm weak. His jaw tightened. I need stability. I need legitimacy. I need a wife. The words hit Ayana like a slap. You're insane. I'm practical. Jae-hoon circled her slowly, like he was appraising merchandise. You're American. Educated. No criminal record. Your grandmother owned property here, which gives you legal residency rights. You're exactly what I need to convince the world I'm not just a criminal with connections. Find someone else. There is no one else. Not anymore. He stopped in front of her. You have 24 hours to decide. Marry me or May's bakery burns. With her in it. Ayana's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. You're a monster. Yes. No hesitation. No remorse. But I'm a monster who keeps my word. Agree to this, and I'll protect you both. Your friend will be safe. You'll have everything you need. All you have to do is play the part of my devoted wife. And if I refuse? Jae-hoon's expression didn't change. Then I'll make sure you watch her suffer before I end you too. The casual way he said it made Ayana's blood run cold. This wasn't a bluff. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a man who'd destroyed lives before and would do it again without losing a single night's sleep. Mrs. Shin touched Ayana's arm gently, saying something soft in Korean. She says you should rest, Jae-hoon translated. You look like you're about to collapse. Ayana wanted to scream. Wanted to fight. Wanted to do anything but surrender. But what choice did she have? May didn't deserve to die because Ayana had taken a wrong turn in the rain. 24 hours, she whispered. 24 hours, Jae-hoon confirmed. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Ayana alone with Mrs. Shin and the wreckage of her life. Mrs. Shin led her through a maze of hallways to the east wing of the compound. The room she opened was larger than Ayana's entire apartment back home. King-size bed. Private bathroom. A balcony overlooking the ocean. It would have been paradise if it wasn't a prison. Mrs. Shin set fresh towels on the bed and pointed to the bathroom, miming that Ayana should shower. Then she bowed and left, locking the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like a death sentence. Ayana stood in the center of the room, soaking wet and shaking. She tried the door. Locked. She tried the balcony. Locked. She tried the windows. All locked. She was trapped. She sank onto the bed and finally let herself cry. Great, gulping sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for her freedom. For May. For the life she'd never get to live. For the grandmother she'd never known who'd somehow led her straight into hell. When the tears finally stopped, Ayana went to the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. Her brown skin was ashen. Her dark eyes were red and swollen. Her braids were coming loose from the rain. She looked like a ghost. She looked like she was already dead. Ayana stripped off her wet clothes and stepped into the shower, letting the hot water burn away the cold. She scrubbed her skin until it hurt, trying to wash off the feel of Jae-hoon's eyes on her. Trying to wash off the memory of what she'd witnessed. Trying to wash off the terror. It didn't work. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel, she found fresh clothes laid out on the bed. A simple black dress. Underwear. Even shoes in her exact size. He'd planned this. All of it. Ayana dressed mechanically, her mind spinning. She could try to escape. Scale the walls. Run for the beach. But Jae-hoon's men were everywhere, and even if she made it out, where would she go? The police? He probably owned them. The embassy? By the time they processed her complaint, May would be dead. She was trapped in a cage with a monster, and the only way out was through. A soft knock on the door made her jump. Mrs. Shin entered with a tray of food, rice, soup, banchan, tea. She set it on the small table by the window and gestured for Ayana to eat. I'm not hungry, Ayana said. Mrs. Shin didn't understand English, but she understood tone. She picked up the spoon and mimed eating, her expression worried. Ayana shook her head. Please. I just want to be alone. Mrs. Shin's eyes filled with something that looked like sympathy. She reached out and squeezed Ayana's hand, just once, then left the room quietly. Ayana walked to the balcony doors and pressed her face against the glass. Outside, the ocean stretched endlessly black beneath the stars. Somewhere out there was freedom. Somewhere out there was home. But she'd never see either again. The door opened without warning. Jae-hoon stood in the entrance, still wearing his black suit, still looking like death personified. You should eat, he said. I should do a lot of things. Ayana didn't turn around. Being kidnapped has killed my appetite. You weren't kidnapped. You got in the van willingly. Because you threatened to hurt my friend. Yes. He stepped into the room. I did. Ayana finally turned to face him. Why me? Out of everyone in Busan, why did it have to be me? Jae-hoon was quiet for a long moment. Wrong place. Wrong time. Wrong choice. He moved to the window beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark. If you'd stayed in your car, you'd be fine. If you hadn't seen the money, you'd be fine. If you hadn't witnessed what happened, you'd be fine. But I didn't stay. I saw. I witnessed. Ayana's voice hardened. And now you're going to force me into marriage to cover your crimes. Yes. His honesty was almost worse than a lie. Comment below what you think Ayana should do, and don't forget to like this video if you're as angry as she is right now. The wedding will be in 3 days, Jae-hoon said, as casual as if he were discussing the weather. Small ceremony. Only my inner circle. You'll wear white. You'll smile. You'll say the vows in Korean. Mrs. Shin will teach you the words. 3 days. Ayana's voice rose. You said I had 24 hours to decide. You have 24 hours to accept reality. The wedding was always going to happen. Jae-hoon turned to face her fully. I don't have time to court you, Ayana. I don't have time to make you fall in love with me. I have enemies closing in from every side, and I need you secured before they realize you exist. I'm not a business deal. Yes, you are. His eyes were cold. Empty. That's exactly what you are. A transaction. You give me legitimacy. I give your friend her life. Simple. Ayana wanted to hit him. Wanted to claw that blank expression off his face. But she knew it would be useless. Men like Jae-hoon didn't feel pain. They dealt it. What happens after the wedding? She asked quietly. You live here. You play the role of my wife when needed. You stay out of my business. He paused. And we make this marriage look real to the world. The implication hung in the air like a noose. Ayana's stomach turned. No. It's not negotiable. Everything is negotiable. She stepped toward him, desperate. I'll marry you. I'll pretend to love you in public. I'll do whatever you need for your reputation. But I won't, her voice cracked. I won't be forced into anything more. Jae-hoon's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been curiosity. You've never been with anyone. It wasn't a question, but Ayana answered anyway. That's none of your business. It matters if you're going to use it as leverage. Jae-hoon moved closer, invading her space the way he had in the rain. Here's the truth, Ayana. The marriage needs to appear legitimate. My enemies will look for any excuse to call it a fraud. But, he paused. I'm not the kind of man who takes what isn't freely given. Tears burned Ayana's eyes. Then what are you asking? I'm asking you to trust that I won't hurt you more than necessary. His voice was soft now, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. I've done terrible things. I'll do more terrible things. But forcing myself on you isn't one of them. Not now. Not ever. Hope flared in Ayana's chest. Then. But, Jae-hoon continued, if you refuse to even try to make this marriage appear real, I'll find other ways. Public displays. Photographs. Situations that will humiliate you far more than cooperation ever could. He stepped back. So you'll have a choice. Work with me, or work against me. Either way, the world will believe you're mine. Ayana's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. You're a monster. You keep saying that like I don't know. Jae-hoon walked to the door. Mrs. Shin will bring breakfast at 7. She'll start teaching you Korean after. The wedding is Saturday night. Don't make me drag you to the altar, Ayana. It won't end well for either of us. He left, locking the door behind him. Ayana collapsed onto the bed and screamed into the pillow until her throat was raw. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. 3 days ago, she was in Atlanta, worrying about her pastry shop's Yelp reviews. Now she was trapped in a compound in Busan, engaged to a mafia boss who spoke about marriage like it was a business merger. She cried until there were no tears left. Then she lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and tried to think. Jae-hoon had made one mistake. One tiny, crucial mistake. He'd told her she had a choice. That meant he had weaknesses. He wasn't all-powerful. He needed her cooperation, at least enough to make the marriage look real. Which meant she had leverage. Not much, but enough to survive. Ayana sat up, wiping her face. She could play this game. She could smile and bow and say the vows. She could even pretend to be the devoted wife if it meant staying alive and keeping May safe. But she'd find a way out. She'd protect May. She'd survive. And when Jae-hoon finally let his guard down, she'd escape. The next morning, Mrs. Shin arrived with breakfast and a stack of flashcards. She was patient, pointing to Korean words and making Ayana repeat them until the pronunciation was right. The wedding vows were simple but beautiful, promising eternal love and devotion. Ayana wanted to vomit saying them. Good, Mrs. Shin said in broken English, patting Ayana's hand. You learn fast. What choice do I have? Ayana muttered. Mrs. Shin's expression softened. She said something in Korean, too fast for Ayana to understand, then pulled out her phone and typed into a translation app. She showed Ayana the screen. He is not always cruel. Once, he was kind boy. Life made him hard. Ayana pushed the phone away. I don't care what he used to be. I care about what he is now. Mrs. Shin sighed and nodded, like she'd expected that answer. She gathered the flashcards and left, locking the door again. The day crawled by. Ayana paced the room like a caged animal. She tried to read, but couldn't focus. She tried to sleep, but nightmares dragged her awake. She stood on the balcony and watched the guards patrol the grounds, counting their routes, looking for weaknesses. There were none. That evening, Jae-hoon returned. He brought a garment bag and laid it on the bed. Your wedding dress, he said. Try it on. I'm not a doll you can dress up. Try it on anyway. Ayana wanted to refuse, but the memory of his threat hung between them. She took the bag into the bathroom and unzipped it slowly, her hands shaking. The dress was beautiful. She hated that it was beautiful. White silk with delicate lace sleeves and a fitted bodice that would hug every curve. It was modest and elegant and exactly the kind of dress Ayana had dreamed of wearing when she was a little girl playing bride. She put it on. It fit perfectly. When she emerged from the bathroom, Jae-hoon was sitting on the edge of the bed, his tie loosened, his jacket discarded. He looked almost human without the armor of his suit. He stood when he saw her. His eyes traveled from her face to her feet and back again, slow and deliberate. Beautiful, he said quietly. Ayana's throat tightened. Don't what? Don't pretend this is real. Don't look at me like, she gestured helplessly. Like I'm not your prisoner. Jae-hoon crossed the room until he was standing directly in front of her. This close, Ayana could see the exhaustion in his face. The shadows under his eyes. The tension in his jaw. You think I want this? His voice was low, almost angry. You think I want to force some innocent woman into my nightmare of a life? Then let me go. I can't. He reached out and touched the lace on her sleeve, his fingers gentle. If I let you go, you're in danger. If I let you go, May's in danger. If I let you go, I lose the one advantage I have in this war. His hand dropped. So I won't let you go. No matter how much you hate me. No matter how much I hate myself. Ayana stared at him, searching for the lie. But there was none. Just exhaustion. Just resignation. Just a man trapped in his own cage, trying to survive. Why are you at war? She asked. Jae-hoon's jaw tightened. That's not your concern. I'm about to become your wife. Everything about you is my concern. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse to answer. Then he sighed and walked to the window, staring out at the dark ocean. 6 months ago, someone took out my father, he said. Made it look like a failed negotiation with the Yakuza, but I know it was planned. Someone set him up. His hands clenched into fists. I took over the organization. I was 29. Too young. Too inexperienced. My father's old guard questioned me at every turn. The Yakuza saw weakness and attacked. Now I'm fighting a war on 3 fronts and I can't trust anyone. Not even your own men? Ayana asked. Jae-hoon laughed, but there was no humor in it. Especially not my own men. Half of them were loyal to my father, not to me. The other half are waiting to see if I'm strong enough to keep power. He turned to face her. That's why I need you. A wife makes me look stable. Settled. Like I'm planning for the future instead of just surviving today. So I'm a prop. You're a shield. His eyes met hers. And maybe, if you're smart, you'll figure out how to use that to your advantage. Ayana frowned. What does that mean? It means my enemies can't touch you without declaring war on me directly. It means you'll have protection most people in Busan would die for. It means, he paused. It means you're safer as my wife than you ever were as a free woman. I don't feel safe. You will. Jae-hoon moved toward the door. Mrs. Shin will bring dinner. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss the wedding details. Wait. The word escaped before Ayana could stop it. Jae-hoon paused, his hand on the doorknob. Your father. Did you love him? The question hung in the air. Jae-hoon's expression went carefully blank. Love is a luxury men like me can't afford, he said finally. Then he left. Ayana stared at the closed door for a long time. She should hate him. She did hate him. But there was something in his eyes when he talked about his father, something broken and raw and almost human. She took off the wedding dress carefully and hung it in the closet. Then she ate the dinner Mrs. Shin brought, forcing down every bite because she'd need her strength. She practiced the Korean vows until the words felt natural on her tongue. She lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, counting down the hours until she became Mrs. Kim Jae-hoon. 48 hours left. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Mrs. Shin brought a makeup artist and a hairstylist. They spoke in rapid Korean, occasionally showing Ayana photos on their phones of different looks. Ayana nodded numbly, letting them do whatever they wanted. What did it matter how she looked when she was walking to her own funeral? That afternoon, Jae-hoon summoned her to his office. It was on the 3rd floor of the compound, behind a door that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. Inside, the room was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. A massive desk dominated the space, covered in papers and laptops and what looked like surveillance photos. Jae-hoon sat behind the desk, his sleeves rolled up, his tie gone. He looked up when Ayana entered, then gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. Ayana sat, her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap. She refused to look weak in front of him. Jae-hoon slid a thick stack of papers across the desk. The marriage contract. Read it. Ayana picked up the papers. They were in both Korean and English, the legal language dense and complicated. But the terms were clear enough. She would take Jae-hoon's name. She would live in his house. She would obey his rules. She would not contact anyone from her old life without permission. She would not leave the compound without an escort. She would not divorce him unless he agreed. She would become his property in every way that mattered. This is insane, Ayana said, her voice shaking. This isn't a marriage contract. It's an ownership agreement. It's protection. Jae-hoon leaned back in his chair. Every rule in that contract exists for a reason. You can't contact your old life because my enemies will trace those connections. You can't leave alone because they'll take you. You can't divorce me because you won't let me. Because a divorce would make you a target. His expression hardened. You think I'm the only dangerous man in Busan? The Yakuza would love to get their hands on my wife. So would the Seoul gangs. So would every criminal who wants to send me a message. This contract keeps you alive, Ayana. Whether you believe it or not. Ayana's hands tightened on the papers. What about May? Is she protected too? Yes. I've already assigned 2 of my men to watch her. She doesn't know they're there, and she won't, but if anyone tries to hurt her, they'll handle it before it gets close. How generous of you. It's not generosity. It's strategy. Jae-hoon stood and walked around the desk, leaning against it so he was directly in front of her. You need to understand something. In my world, loyalty is currency. You're loyal to me, I'm loyal to you. You protect my interests, I protect yours. That's how this works. I'm not loyal to you, Ayana said flatly. I'm trapped by you. There's a difference. For now. He crossed his arms. But loyalty can be earned, Ayana. Even from prisoners. Is that what happened with your men? You earned their loyalty. Something dark flickered across Jae-hoon's face. No. I inherited them. And half of them would sell me out for the right price. He leaned closer. That's why I need someone I can trust. Someone who has no connections to my world. Someone who has no choice but to stay, Ayana finished bitterly. Yes. At least he was honest. Ayana looked down at the contract again. There was a section near the end about children. Her stomach dropped. You expect me to have your children? Eventually. Jae-hoon's voice was matter-of-fact. An heir makes the marriage more legitimate. But not right away. We have time. Time. Ayana laughed, high and sharp. You're planning my entire life like I'm some kind of investment. I'm planning our survival. He pushed off the desk and returned to his chair. Sign the contract, Ayana. Or don't. But if you don't, May's in danger tomorrow morning. Your choice. Ayana's vision blurred with tears. She grabbed the pen he offered and signed her name at the bottom of every page, each stroke feeling like a nail in her coffin. When she finished, Jae-hoon took the papers and locked them in his desk drawer. Good, he said. Now we're bound by law as well as necessity. I hate you. I know. He didn't sound bothered. You can go. Ayana stood on shaking legs and walked to the door. But before she left, she turned back. You said loyalty can be earned, she said quietly. But you can't earn something through force. You can only take it. And what you take never lasts. Jae-hoon's expression didn't change. We'll see. That night, Ayana couldn't sleep. She paced her room like a caged animal, her mind spinning. Tomorrow was the wedding. Tomorrow she'd speak the vows. Tomorrow she'd become Mrs. Kim Jae-hoon. Tomorrow her life, as she knew it, would end. Around midnight, she heard voices in the hallway. Raised voices. Angry voices. She pressed her ear to the door and caught fragments of Korean. Something about a shipment, something about the Yakuza, something about a traitor. Then gunfire erupted. Ayana jumped back from the door, her heart racing. Footsteps thundered past her room. More shouts. More shots. The compound was under attack. She ran to the balcony and looked out. In the courtyard below, Jae-hoon's men were fighting with intruders dressed in black. Flashes lit up the darkness. Blood splattered across the white stone. Ayana's stomach turned. This was Jae-hoon's world. This was the life she was marrying into. Violence and danger and blood. The door to her room burst open. Jae-hoon stood there, weapon in hand, his white shirt stained with red. Get away from the window, he barked. Ayana obeyed, her legs moving on instinct. Jae-hoon crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her behind him, shielding her with his body as the balcony glass shattered. Stay down, he ordered, then fired through the broken window. Someone screamed outside. Jae-hoon fired twice more, then grabbed Ayana's arm and pulled her toward the door. We're moving. Now. What's happening? The Yakuza found out about the wedding. His jaw was tight. They're trying to stop it before it happens. Ayana's blood went cold. Why? Because without you, I have no legitimacy. Without legitimacy, my men turn on me. Without my men, the Yakuza take Busan. He pushed her into the hallway, where 2 of his guards were waiting. They want me weak, and you're how they make that happen. I'm not. Yes, you are. Jae-hoon looked at her, and for the first time, she saw real fear in his eyes. Not for himself. For her. Which is why you're going to survive this. Understand. Before Ayana could answer, an explosion rocked the compound. The lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in red. And Jae-hoon pushed Ayana into the arms of his guards and ran toward the fighting, disappearing into the chaos. Comment below if you think Ayana should run or stay, and smash that like button. The guards dragged Ayana down a narrow staircase she'd never seen before, hidden behind a panel in the hallway. Their grips were iron on her arms, and she stumbled trying to keep up. Behind them, the sounds of fighting echoed through the compound like thunder. Where are we going? Ayana gasped. Neither guard answered. They probably didn't speak English. Or they'd been ordered not to talk to her. Either way, Ayana was being pulled through Jae-hoon's fortress like cargo, with no idea if she was being saved or delivered to her death. They emerged in an underground garage filled with black vehicles. One guard shoved her into the back of an SUV while the other climbed into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. Wait, Ayana said. What about Jae-hoon? The guard in the passenger seat turned and said something in Korean. His tone was reassuring, but Ayana didn't understand a word. I'm not leaving without him, she tried again. The driver said something sharp, then the SUV lurched forward. They sped through a tunnel that seemed to go on forever, the walls blurring past. Ayana's ears popped as they climbed. Finally, they burst out into the night on a road high in the mountains above Busan. The city sprawled below them, a sea of lights. Somewhere down there, Jae-hoon was fighting for his life. And Ayana was running away. She should have been relieved. This was her chance to escape. She could demand they take her to the police, to the embassy, anywhere but back to that compound. She could tell them everything and let the authorities handle Jae-hoon and his war. But May was still down there. Still in danger. And if Jae-hoon didn't survive tonight, who would protect her? "Take me back," Ayana said. The guards ignored her. "Take me back." She grabbed the driver's shoulder. "Jae-hoon needs help. We have to." The passenger guard caught her wrist and pushed her back, none too gently. He said something that sounded like a warning. Ayana sank into her seat, her mind racing. She was trapped again. Different cage, same chains. They drove for 20 minutes before pulling up to a small house on the outskirts of the city. It was modest, almost invisible among the other homes on the street. The guards pulled Ayana inside and locked the door behind them. The house was a safe house, clearly. Minimal furniture. Reinforced windows. Security cameras in every corner. One guard positioned himself at the front door while the other checked every room, weapon drawn. Ayana stood in the center of the living room, hugging herself. Her wedding was supposed to be tomorrow. Instead, she was hiding in a safe house while her husband-to-be fought the Yakuza. Husband-to-be. The words tasted bitter. An hour passed. Then two. The guards spoke quietly to each other in Korean, occasionally glancing at Ayana like they weren't sure what to do with her. She paced. She sat. She paced again. She checked her phone, still dead. She asked for a charger. They didn't understand or didn't care. Finally, around 3 in the morning, the front door opened. Jae-hoon walked in, covered in blood. Ayana's breath caught. His white shirt was soaked through with red. His face was splattered. His hands were dark with it. For a moment, she thought he was dying. Then he looked at her, and his eyes were clear. Alert. Alive. "You're hurt," Ayana said, moving toward him without thinking. Jae-hoon held up a hand to stop her. "Not my blood." The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they made Ayana's stomach turn. All that blood belonged to someone else. Multiple someone else's. Jae-hoon spoke rapidly to his guards in Korean. They bowed and left the house, closing the door behind them. Suddenly, Ayana was alone with him in the small space, the scent of copper heavy in the air. "Are they?" Ayana couldn't finish the question. "Handled." Jae-hoon moved to the kitchen sink and began washing his hands. The water ran red. "The ones who survived won't try again." I made sure they understood the consequences. Ayana didn't want to know what that meant. Jae-hoon dried his hands on a towel, then pulled off his ruined shirt. Ayana looked away instinctively, but not before she saw the scars. They covered his back and chest, long, thin lines that could only have come from a blade. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. "Who did that to you?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Jae-hoon glanced at her, then at his reflection in the window. "My father's boss. Before my father took over." His voice was flat. "I was 12. He wanted to teach me respect." Ayana's throat tightened. "That's not teaching. That's torture." "In my world, they're the same thing." Jae-hoon found a clean shirt in a closet and pulled it on. "You should sleep. We're staying here tonight. Tomorrow we go back to the compound. Tomorrow's our wedding day." "I know." He sat on the couch, his exhaustion finally showing. "It's still happening. The attack doesn't change anything. If anything, it makes the wedding more important. I need to show strength. Show that I can't be intimidated." Ayana stared at him. "You're insane. Your compound was just attacked. People were hurt. And you want to throw a wedding?" "I don't want to." Jae-hoon's voice was sharp. "I have to. Do you understand the difference? In my position, wanting doesn't matter. Only necessity matters. And I'm a necessity." "Yes." No hesitation. No apology. "You are." Ayana wanted to scream. Wanted to throw something. Wanted to hurt him the way he'd hurt her by dragging her into this nightmare. But she was so tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being afraid. Tired of everything. She sank into a chair across from him. "Do you ever regret it? Taking over from your father?" Jae-hoon was quiet for a long time. "Every day," he said finally. "But regret doesn't change anything. I made a choice. Now I live with it. You could walk away." He laughed, bitter and cold. "Walk away to where?" "The Yakuza would hunt me. My own men would eliminate me for showing weakness. The police would arrest me. There's no walking away from this life, Ayana. There's only surviving it. Then why force me into it? Because I'm selfish. He met her eyes. Because I needed you and I took you, and I don't care enough about your happiness to let you go. Does that make me a monster? Yes. Does it change anything? No. At least he was honest. Ayana almost respected him for that. Almost. What happens if I run? She asked. Tonight. Right now. What happens if I walk out that door? Jae-hoon's expression didn't change. You'd make it 3 blocks before my men caught you. Then I'd keep you somewhere more secure until the wedding. Is that what you want? I want to go home. You don't have a home anymore. His voice softened slightly. Atlanta isn't safe for you now. The Yakuza know your name. They know your face. They'll use you to get to me, whether you're my wife or not. The only safe place for you is by my side. That's not safety. That's prison. Sometimes they're the same thing. Ayana closed her eyes. She was so tired of this circular logic. Tired of Jae-hoon's brutal honesty. Tired of being trapped with no good options. I need to sleep, she said. Jae-hoon nodded toward a bedroom. That one's yours. I'll take the couch. Ayana stood and walked to the bedroom, but she paused at the door. Jae-hoon. Those scars on your back. Did your father stop it? The torture. Jae-hoon's jaw tightened. Eventually. When I was strong enough to handle it myself. How old were you? 14. Ayana's stomach dropped. 14. He'd been a child. A child forced to fight to survive. And now he was a man forcing her to marry to survive. The cycle was ugly and brutal and endless. She went into the bedroom and closed the door. The bed was small but clean. She lay down fully clothed and stared at the ceiling, listening to Jae-hoon move around in the living room. Eventually, his footsteps stopped. The house went silent. But Ayana couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the night, the shots, the blood, Jae-hoon's eyes when he'd shielded her. He'd protected her. Put himself between her and danger. Why would he do that if she was just a transaction? Maybe because transactions needed to be kept intact. Or maybe, just maybe, there was something human left inside Kim Jae-hoon after all. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified her. Because humans could be manipulated. Humans could be changed. And if Jae-hoon was still human beneath the monster, then Ayana might actually survive this. She might even find a way to escape. If you're still watching, drop a comment telling me if you think Ayana should try to change Jae-hoon or just focus on escape, and hit that subscribe button. Morning came too fast. Ayana woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back like a wave, and her stomach dropped. Today was her wedding day. She sat up slowly, her body aching from tension. Through the thin walls, she could hear Jae-hoon talking on the phone in Korean, his voice low and controlled. She couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. He was giving orders. Ayana stood and caught her reflection in the small mirror on the wall. She looked haunted. Dark circles under her eyes. Her braids messy from tossing and turning. Her brown skin ashen with exhaustion. She looked like a bride on her way to a funeral. When she emerged from the bedroom, Jae-hoon was sitting at the small kitchen table with his phone and a cup of coffee. He'd showered and changed into fresh clothes, black pants, white shirt, no tie yet. He looked almost normal. Almost like a regular man having breakfast before his wedding. Except for the weapon on the table beside his coffee. Mrs. Shin is on her way, he said without looking up. She'll help you get ready. We leave for the compound in 2 hours. Ayana poured herself coffee with shaking hands. Is it safe to go back? Safe enough. I've tripled the guards. The Yakuza won't try again today. They're regrouping. He finally looked at her. They'll try again eventually. But not today. How comforting. Jae-hoon's lips twitched, almost like he wanted to smile. You should eat something. It's going to be a long day. Ayana sat across from him, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. Do you have family? Anyone who'll be at the wedding? No. The word was flat. Final. My father's gone. My mother abandoned me when I was 8. No siblings. No aunts or uncles who claim me. He took a sip of coffee. Just my men. That's my family now. That's sad. That's survival. Jae-hoon set down his cup. Family makes you weak. Gives your enemies leverage. I learned that lesson young. Is that why you took me? Because I have no one here? No leverage? Partially. He studied her face. But also because you're stronger than you think. Last night, when the fighting started, you didn't panic. You listened and followed instructions. Most people can't do that under pressure. Ayana hadn't thought about it that way. She'd been too terrified to think at all. But Jae-hoon was right, she hadn't frozen. Some survival instinct had kicked in. My grandmother, she said quietly. The one who left me the bakery. I never met her. My mom cut ties with her when I was a baby. But my mom always said she was the strongest woman she'd ever known. Said she survived things that would have broken anyone else. What things? I don't know. Mom never talked about it. Ayana looked at Jae-hoon. But I think she would have understood this. The impossible choices. The survival at any cost. Jae-hoon was quiet for a moment. Maybe that's why you ended up here. Genetics. Fate. Call it whatever you want. But you have that same strength in you. I saw it last night. Before Ayana could respond, there was a knock at the door. Jae-hoon's hand went to his weapon instantly, his whole body tensing. Then he relaxed and opened the door. Mrs. Shin bustled in with 3 large bags and immediately started fussing over Ayana in Korean. She shooed Jae-hoon away, practically pushing him out the door of his own safe house. I'll be back in 90 minutes, he said to Ayana. Be ready. Then he was gone, and Ayana was alone with Mrs. Shin and the reality of what was about to happen. Mrs. Shin transformed the small bedroom into a makeshift salon. She laid out the wedding dress, the shoes, the jewelry. Then she sat Ayana down and began working on her hair and makeup with expert precision. As she worked, Mrs. Shin hummed softly. It was a sad song, Ayana thought. Something melancholy and old. Mrs. Shin, Ayana said carefully. Can I ask you something? Mrs. Shin paused, meeting Ayana's eyes in the mirror. Yes. Do you think Jae-hoon is a good man? Mrs. Shin's hands stilled. She was quiet for so long that Ayana thought she wouldn't answer. Then she pulled out her phone and typed into the translation app. He is not good man. But he is not only bad man. He is complicated man. Like all men who suffer too much when young. Ayana's chest tightened. Did you know him when he was a child? Mrs. Shin nodded. She typed again. I worked for old boss. The one who hurt Jae-hoon. I saw what they did to him. I could not stop it. I am ashamed. It wasn't your fault. Maybe. Maybe not. Mrs. Shin's eyes were wet. She typed more. When Jae-hoon stopped that man, he found me after. He was 14. Covered in blood. He said, you are free now. Then he let me leave. 2 years later, his father took over. Jae-hoon found me again. Asked me to work for him. Said he wanted someone who remembered what he survived. So he would never become what he destroyed. Ayana's throat was tight. Did it work? Did he avoid becoming that? Mrs. Shin's expression was complicated. She typed slowly. Some days yes. Some days no. But he tries. That is more than most men in his position. She put away her phone and went back to Ayana's hair, her hands gentle but efficient. Ayana sat in silence, processing. Jae-hoon wasn't just a monster. He was a boy who'd been tortured into becoming something hard and cold. A boy who'd survived at 14 and somehow held on to enough humanity to free the woman who'd witnessed his suffering. It didn't excuse what he was doing to her. But it explained it. An hour later, Ayana stood in front of the mirror in her wedding dress. Mrs. Shin had worked magic. Ayana's makeup was flawless, her braids twisted into an elegant updo with small white flowers woven through. The dress fit like it had been made for her body, hugging her curves before flowing into a small train. She looked beautiful. She looked like a real bride. She looked like a lie. Mrs. Shin dabbed at her eyes, saying something in Korean that sounded like a blessing. Then she handed Ayana a small bouquet of white roses. The door opened. Jae-hoon stood there in a full black suit, his hair styled, his face clean-shaven. He looked devastating. Like a dark prince from a twisted fairy tale. His eyes locked on Ayana, and something shifted in his expression. Something soft. Almost vulnerable. You're beautiful, he said quietly. Don't. Ayana's voice cracked. Don't make this harder than it already is. Jae-hoon stepped into the room, and Mrs. Shin quietly excused herself. When they were alone, he moved closer, careful not to touch Ayana's dress. I know you hate this, he said. I know you hate me. But I need you to understand something. After today, you're under my protection. Completely. No one will touch you. No one will hurt you. I'll handle anyone who tries. Why? Ayana searched his face. Why do you care what happens to me? Because you're mine now. His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek, but not quite touching. And I protect what's mine. Always. It should have sounded possessive. It should have made her angry. But the way he said it, with such absolute certainty, made Ayana's heart skip. What if I don't want to be yours? Then you'll spend the rest of your life fighting me. His hand dropped. But you'll do it safely. And alive. That's more than most people in Busan can say. There was a honk outside. The cars had arrived. Jae-hoon extended his hand. It's time. Ayana stared at his hand like it was a snake. This was it. Her last chance to refuse. To fight. To run. But May's face flashed in her mind. And her grandmother's bakery. And the chaos from last night. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. He led her out of the safe house and into the waiting car. Mrs. Shin was already inside, smiling through her tears. The drive back to the compound was silent. Jae-hoon held Ayana's hand the entire time, his thumb occasionally brushing across her knuckles. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like a chain. When they arrived, the compound was transformed. White flowers everywhere. Candles lining the walkways. Music drifting through the air. Jae-hoon's men stood at attention in their finest suits, their weapons hidden but present. It looked like a dream. It felt like a nightmare. Jae-hoon helped Ayana out of the car. Remember the vows? Yes. Ayana's voice was barely a whisper. Remember to smile. I'll try. That's all I ask. He led her through the compound to the garden overlooking the ocean. A small altar had been set up, decorated with white silk and roses. About 30 men stood on either side, Jae-hoon's inner circle, all watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to approval to barely concealed suspicion. An older man in traditional Korean robes stood at the altar. The officiant. This was really happening. Jae-hoon walked Ayana down the makeshift aisle, his hand firm on hers. When they reached the altar, he turned to face her. The officiant began speaking in Korean, his voice sonorous and formal. Ayana's heart pounded. This was wrong. All wrong. She shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be doing this. But then Jae-hoon squeezed her hand once, gently, and somehow that small gesture steadied her. The officiant gestured to Jae-hoon. He spoke his vows in Korean, his voice clear and strong. Ayana didn't understand all the words, but she caught enough. Love. Honor. Protect. Forever. Then it was her turn. Ayana opened her mouth. The Korean words Mrs. Shin had taught her sat on her tongue ready. But she couldn't make herself say them. Jae-hoon's eyes met hers. There was no threat in them. No anger. Just waiting. Ayana took a shaky breath and spoke the vows. Her pronunciation was rough, her accent thick, but she got through them. Each word felt like giving up a piece of herself. The officiant smiled and said something that must have been the final blessing. Then he nodded to Jae-hoon. You may kiss your bride. Jae-hoon stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup Ayana's face. His touch was surprisingly gentle, almost reverent. I'm sorry, he whispered, so quietly only she could hear. Then he kissed her. It wasn't rough or demanding like Ayana had feared. It was soft, careful. His lips moved against hers with a tenderness that made her chest ache. For a moment, just one brief moment, Ayana forgot where she was. Forgot why this was happening. Forgot everything except the warmth of his mouth and the way his thumb stroked her cheek. Then reality crashed back. Jae-hoon pulled away, and the spell broke. His men applauded. Mrs. Shin cried. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife in Korean. Ayana was married. To a monster. In front of witnesses who would eliminate her if she tried to run. Jae-hoon kept her hand in his as they turned to face his men. "This is my wife," he said in English, then repeated it in Korean. "Anyone who harms her answers to me. Anyone who disrespects her answers to me. She is under my protection. Completely." The men bowed. Some looked pleased. Others looked calculating. One man in the back, tall, with a scar across his throat, looked furious. Ayana's instincts screamed danger, but before she could process it, Jae-hoon was leading her away from the altar toward a long table laden with food. A reception. Of course. Because nothing said happy marriage like celebrating with armed criminals. Mrs. Shin appeared and guided Ayana to the head of the table, settling her into a chair beside Jae-hoon. Men approached one by one to offer congratulations in Korean. Some spoke English, offering stiff compliments about how beautiful she looked. All of them stared at her like she was a fascinating exhibit in a zoo. Ayana smiled until her face hurt, nodded until her neck ached, accepted toasts of soju that burned going down. Through it all, Jae-hoon stayed close, his hand on her back, his body angled toward hers, playing the attentive husband so convincingly that Ayana almost believed it herself. Almost. "You're doing well," he murmured during a break in the parade of well-wishers. "Better than I expected." "I'm good at pretending," Ayana said, her smile never slipping. "I've been pretending I'm not terrified for 3 days straight." "You don't have to be terrified of me." "Yes, I do." "You threatened to hurt my best friend." Jae-hoon's jaw tightened. "And I meant it. But May is safe now. I keep my promises, Ayana. The good ones and the bad ones." Before she could respond, the man with the scar across his throat approached their table. He bowed to Jae-hoon but didn't look at Ayana. He spoke in rapid Korean. Jae-hoon's expression darkened with every word. Finally, Jae-hoon cut him off with a sharp response that made the man's face flush with anger. The man bowed again, deeper this time, but his eyes were cold. Then he walked away. "What was that about?" Ayana asked. "Nothing you need to worry about." But Jae-hoon's hand had moved to rest protectively on the table between them. "He doesn't like me. He doesn't like that you're American. Doesn't like that I married outside the organization. Doesn't like that I'm changing the old ways." Jae-hoon's voice was flat. "His name is Beckman Seo. He was my father's right hand. He thinks he should be sitting in my chair. Is he dangerous?" "Everyone here is dangerous." Jae-hoon looked at her. "But I'm the most dangerous. Remember that." The reception dragged on for hours. Food was served, elaborate Korean dishes that Ayana barely tasted. More toasts were made. Some of Jae-hoon's men got drunk and loud. Others stayed sober and watchful. Through it all, Ayana felt Minesio's eyes on her. Calculating. Hateful. Finally, as the sun began to set, Jae-hoon stood and addressed his men in Korean. Whatever he said made them laugh and cheer. Then he took Ayana's hand and pulled her to her feet. "It's time," he said quietly. Ayana's stomach dropped. "Time for what?" "To retire for the evening." His expression was unreadable. "Everyone expects it." The implication hung in the air. Ayana's face burned with humiliation as Jae-hoon's men called out what could only be crude jokes based on their laughter. Jae-hoon led her through the compound, his men's voices fading behind them. Mrs. Shin followed at a distance, her expression worried. They climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Jae-hoon's suite was at the end of a long hallway, behind a reinforced door. He opened it and gestured for Ayana to enter first. The room was enormous. King-size bed with black silk sheets. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. A sitting area with a couch and chairs. A bathroom visible through an open door that looked bigger than Ayana's old bedroom. It was beautiful. It was a cage. Jae-hoon closed the door behind them, and suddenly they were alone. Really alone. No guards. No Mrs. Shin. Just a man and a woman on their wedding night. Ayana's hands shook as she set down her bouquet. "So, what happens now?" Jae-hoon loosened his tie and poured himself a drink from a bar cart in the corner. "Now we wait." "Wait for what?" "For my men to stop listening at the door." He gestured to the hallway. "Give it 20 minutes. They'll get bored and assume we're occupied." Heat flooded Ayana's face. And then nothing. Jae-hoon took a long drink. "I told you I'm not that kind of man, Ayana. I meant it." Relief warred with confusion. But you said? I said a lot of things to ensure your cooperation. He set down his glass. The truth is more complicated. But what matters is this: I won't force you. Not tonight. Not ever. Ayana wanted to hit him. You're unbelievable. You let me think, you made me believe that I would force you. Yes, because I needed you compliant. Needed you to sign the contract and say the vows without fighting me every step. He moved closer, and Ayana backed up instinctively. But I meant what I said at the altar. I will protect you. I won't hurt you. Not like that. What about emotionally? Psychologically? Ayana's voice rose. What about the fact that you've destroyed my entire life? Your life was ordinary at best. The words were cruel, clinical. You ran a struggling pastry shop in Atlanta. You had no family except a mother who barely calls. No serious relationship. No real purpose beyond surviving day to day. He tilted his head. I gave you purpose, Ayana. Now you're the wife of the most powerful man in Busan. You're protected. Provided for. Important. I was happy. You were existing. Jae-hoon's voice was quiet now. Dangerous. There's a difference. Ayana's eyes burned with tears. You don't get to tell me what my life was worth. You're right. I don't. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. But I'm telling you what it's worth now. You matter now. Your safety matters. Your well-being matters. Well-being? Ayana laughed bitterly. How can I have any well-being in a prison? Jae-hoon spun to face her. Because I'm going to give you everything. Anything you want. Money. Clothes. Travel escorted, but still. I'll set up May with funds so she never has to worry again. I'll expand your grandmother's bakery into a chain if you want. I'll give you the world, Ayana. All you have to do is stay. I don't have a choice about staying. No. He stepped closer, and this time Ayana didn't back away. You don't. But you have a choice about everything else. You can hate me and make both of us miserable. Or you can accept this and find a way to live with it. Maybe even find a way to be content. Content. The word tasted like ash. That's all you're offering? Not happiness. Not love. Just content. Jae-hoon's expression softened slightly. I don't know how to offer anything else. Love is something I've never had. Don't know if I'm capable of it. But I can offer safety. Protection. Respect if you earn it. That's more than most marriages have. Ayana stared at him. He was right in a twisted way. Lots of marriages had less than what he was offering. But those marriages were chosen. This one was forced. What if I said I wanted to go home? She asked quietly. Back to Atlanta. Just for a visit. To see my mom. To say goodbye properly. I'd say no. Too dangerous. The Yakuza have connections in America. They'd hurt you the moment you landed. Jae-hoon's voice was firm. But I'd let you video call your mother. Let you explain you got married quickly. Fell in love with Korea. Whatever story you want to tell. I won't stop you from talking to her. How generous. I'm trying, Ayana. The frustration in his voice was real. I know I'm asking the impossible. But I'm trying to make this bearable for you. By giving me luxuries while taking my freedom? Yes. No apology. Because that's all I know how to give. The honesty was almost worse than lies would have been. At least lies she could fight against. This brutal truth just sat between them like a wall. Ayana walked to the window and looked out at the ocean. The sun had set completely now, and the water was black except for the reflection of the compound's lights. Tell me about your father, she said suddenly. The real story. Not the official version. Jae-hoon was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he joined her at the window, keeping a careful distance between them. My father was a monster, he said finally. Worse than me in every way. He took over the organization by eliminating the previous boss, the man who tortured me. I thought he was saving me. But he was just removing competition. Did he love you? No. He used me. Trained me to be his weapon. His heir. Jae-hoon's reflection in the glass was haunted. But he taught me one important thing. In this world, you're either predator or prey. There's no middle ground. And which am I? Ayana asked. Predator or prey? Jae-hoon turned to look at her directly. Neither. You're something I've never encountered before. His hand lifted, almost touching her face before dropping again. You're a complication I didn't plan for. A variable I can't control. And that terrifies me more than the Yakuza ever could. The vulnerability in his voice was startling. Real. Ayana's heart pounded. This man, this monster, was afraid of her. Not physically, but afraid of what she represented. Afraid of what she might make him feel. Subscribe now because what happens between them next will change everything. Why does it terrify you? Ayana asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jae-hoon's jaw clenched. He turned away from her, walking to the bar to pour another drink. Because caring about someone makes you weak. Makes you predictable. My father cared about power, and someone used that to eliminate him. I swore I'd never care about anything enough to be vulnerable. And now you have a wife. Now I have a wife. He downed the drink in one gulp. A wife the Yakuza already tried to stop. A wife my own men view as a liability. A wife who hates me and has every right to. Ayana moved closer, studying his profile in the low light. If you know it makes you weak, why marry me at all? You could have handled the witness problem differently that first night. I tried to convince myself to do exactly that. Jae-hoon's hands gripped the edge of the bar. I stood in that alley while you ran. All I had to do was give the order. But I couldn't. You looked so, he stopped himself. I looked so what? Alive. The word came out rough. Everyone in my world is half dead already. Walking corpses pretending to feel something. But you were terrified and furious, and so completely alive that I couldn't. He slammed his fist on the bar. I couldn't do it. So I trapped you instead. Which might be worse. Ayana's throat tightened. This broken man in front of her wasn't what she expected. She'd expected cruelty without remorse. Violence without conscience. But Jae-hoon was drowning in both, trying desperately to convince himself he didn't care. Maybe it's not worse, she said quietly. Jae-hoon turned to her, his eyes searching her face. How can you say that? Because I'm still alive. Still breathing. Still able to fight. Ayana took a step closer. You took my freedom, but you didn't take my life. That has to count for something. It counts for me being slightly less monstrous than I could be. That's not redemption, Ayana. That's just a lower level of hell. Maybe. She was close enough now to see the exhaustion etched into his features. The fine lines around his eyes. The tension in his shoulders. But even hell has different levels. And you pulled me out of the deepest one when you chose not to give that order. Jae-hoon's hand came up, his fingers finally making contact with her face. He traced her cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicted everything he was. You should hate me. I do. Ayana's breath caught. But I'm also trying to understand you. And that's confusing. Understanding me won't make this easier. His thumb brushed across her lower lip. It'll just hurt more when I inevitably disappoint you. Then disappoint me. Ayana's heart raced. But stop pretending you're just a monster. Monsters don't apologize. They don't feel terrified. They don't, she gestured to his hand on her face. Touch their prisoners like they're made of glass. Jae-hoon's eyes darkened with something Ayana couldn't name. Want. Need. Desperation. You're not my prisoner, he said hoarsely. You're my wife. Those aren't mutually exclusive. They should be. He leaned in, his forehead almost touching hers. God, Ayana. What are you doing to me? Surviving you. Her voice shook. The only way I know how. The space between them crackled with tension. Jae-hoon's breathing had changed, become heavier. His hand slid from her face to the back of her neck, his fingers gentle against her skin. If I kiss you again, he said quietly, it won't be for show. It won't be because anyone's watching. It'll be because I want to. Ayana's pulse thundered in her ears. This was insane. She shouldn't want this. Shouldn't want him. But something about his raw honesty, his brokenness, called to something equally broken in her. Then don't kiss me, she whispered. What if I can't help it? Then I guess we're both weaker than we thought. He kissed her. It was nothing like the kiss at the altar. This was desperate. Hungry. His mouth claimed hers with an intensity that stole her breath. Ayana's hands came up to his chest, and she wasn't sure if she was pushing him away or pulling him closer. Jae-hoon's other arm wrapped around her waist, drawing her against him. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. Like he'd been starving and she was sustenance. Ayana kissed him back. She couldn't explain why, couldn't justify it. But in that moment, with his hands on her and his mouth moving against hers, she felt something other than fear for the first time in days. She felt wanted, needed, alive. Jae-hoon pulled back suddenly, his breathing ragged. We should stop. Why? Ayana's voice was barely recognizable. Because if we don't stop now, I won't want to stop at all. His eyes were wild. And you deserve better than a wedding night that starts with confusion and ends with regret. Ayana's head spun. I thought you said you wouldn't force. It's not about force. It's about clarity. Jae-hoon released her and stepped back, running his hands through his hair. I want you, Ayana. More than I've wanted anything in my life. But I want you to want me back. Really want me. Not because you're scared or trying to survive or confused by the situation. The fact that he was drawing this line, that he cared about her state of mind, would have been funny if Ayana's entire body wasn't still trembling from his kiss. So what now? She asked. Now you sleep in the bed. I'll sleep on the couch. Jae-hoon walked to a closet and pulled out a blanket. In the morning, we'll figure out how to live together without destroying each other. That's it? You're just going to sleep on the couch? On your wedding night? Yes. He started making up the couch with jerky, frustrated movements. Because that's what you do when you care about someone. You put their needs above your wants. Even when it's difficult. Ayana stared at him. You care about me. I'm trying not to. He didn't look at her. It's not working. Something warm and terrifying unfurled in Ayana's chest. This man, this monster who'd kidnapped her and forced her into marriage, was trying to protect her. From himself. From the situation. From everything. It didn't make what he'd done okay. But it made him human. Jae-hoon. She waited until he looked at her. Thank you. For what? For stopping. For giving me space. She gestured helplessly. For being less of a monster than you could be. His smile was sad. The bar is pretty low, Ayana. I know. But you're still clearing it. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Ayana turned and went into the bathroom to change. Mrs. Shin had left silk pajamas hanging on the door, modest, long-sleeved, nothing provocative. She washed off her makeup and took down her hair, her hands shaking. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. This woman had kissed her captor. Had felt something for him. Had thanked him for basic decency. This woman was losing her mind. Or maybe she was just trying to survive the only way she knew how. When Ayana emerged from the bathroom, Jae-hoon was already on the couch with his eyes closed. He'd stripped down to his undershirt and dress pants, his jacket and tie discarded on a chair. Even relaxed, he looked dangerous. Ayana climbed into the massive bed and pulled the covers up to her chin. The sheets smelled like him, something dark and expensive and masculine. Jae-hoon, she said into the darkness. Yeah, if I asked you to let me know I'm okay, would you? I already did. Sent word this afternoon that you got married and you're safe. He paused. She thinks you eloped with a businessman you met at the bakery. That you fell fast and hard. Mrs. Shin delivered the message personally. Ayana's eyes burned with tears. She must think I've lost my mind. Better than thinking you're in danger. I suppose so. Ayana wiped her eyes. Will I ever get to see her again? Maybe. When things are safer. When the war is over. Jae-hoon's voice was heavy with exhaustion. I'm not trying to erase your old life completely, Ayana. I'm just trying to keep you alive long enough to have a future. What if your war never ends? Then I'll keep fighting until it does. And you'll be free. The casual way he said it made Ayana's stomach clench. Don't say that. Why not? Isn't that what you want? For this to be over and for you to be free. Ayana was quiet, searching her heart for the truth. A few days ago, the answer would have been an immediate yes. But now, after seeing his scars and his fear and his desperate attempt at decency, she wasn't sure. I don't know what I want anymore, she admitted. Jae-hoon was silent for so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, that makes two of us. Ayana closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind raced. She was married to a mafia boss. She'd kissed him and liked it. She was starting to see him as something more than a monster. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Because if she started to care about Kim Jae-hoon, she'd lose the anger that was keeping her strong. She'd lose the clarity that told her this was wrong. She'd lose herself in the process of trying to understand him. And she couldn't afford to lose anything else. Drop a comment if you think Ayana is falling for Jae-hoon or just playing a long game to escape. Ayana woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of Jae-hoon on the phone. He was speaking rapid Korean, his voice low and urgent. She kept her eyes closed, listening to the cadence of his words even though she couldn't understand them. When he hung up, she heard him move around the room, gathering things. Then the shower turned on in the bathroom. Ayana sat up slowly, her body aching in strange places. Not from anything physical, Jae-hoon had kept his word about that. But from the tension. From sleeping in a strange bed. From the emotional whiplash of the past 24 hours. She was married. Actually married. The realization hit her fresh, like it did every time she woke up. This wasn't a nightmare she could escape. This was her new reality. Jae-hoon emerged from the bathroom 15 minutes later, dressed in dark pants and a black button-down, his hair still damp. He stopped when he saw Ayana was awake. "Good morning," he said carefully. "Is it?" Ayana pulled her knees to her chest. "A good morning, I mean. That depends on your definition." He moved to the closet and pulled out a leather jacket. "The Yakuza didn't attack again last night. My men are still loyal. You're alive. By my standards, that's pretty good. Your standards are depressing. Welcome to my world." He checked his weapon, then secured it beneath the jacket. "Mrs. Shin will bring breakfast in an hour. I have business to handle this morning, but I'll be back by noon." "What kind of business?" Jae-hoon paused at the door. "The kind you don't need to know about. I'm your wife now. Don't I have a right to know what you do?" "You're my wife, which means you have a right to be protected from what I do." His expression softened slightly. "Trust me, Ayana. Some things are better left unknown." He left before she could argue. Ayana sat in the silent room, feeling the weight of her isolation. She was alone in this massive compound, married to a man she barely knew, with no idea what came next. She got up and explored the suite properly for the first time. The bathroom was marble and chrome, with a shower big enough for multiple people and a bathtub that could double as a small pool. The closet was enormous, and when Ayana opened it, she found one side completely filled with women's clothes in her exact size. Dresses, pants, shirts, shoes, jewelry. Everything designer. Everything expensive. Everything chosen by someone who'd studied her measurements and her style. It should have been flattering. Instead, it felt like being dressed for a role in a play she never auditioned for. Ayana picked a simple pair of jeans and a soft sweater, relishing the normalcy of it. Then she ventured out of the bedroom. The compound looked different in daylight. Less fortress, more luxury estate. She wandered the third floor, noting the security cameras in every corner. Guards nodded to her as she passed, but didn't speak. She wasn't sure if they were being respectful or if they'd been ordered not to talk to her. She found a library filled with books in Korean and English. A gym with equipment that looked barely used. A room that was clearly Jae-hoon's office, locked, of course. Finally, she made her way downstairs to the main living area. Mrs. Shin was there arranging flowers in a vase. Her face lit up when she saw Ayana. "Good morning," she said in careful English. "You sleep okay?" "Not really." Ayana managed a smile. "But I survived." Mrs. Shin's expression turned sympathetic. She gestured for Ayana to follow her to the kitchen, where she'd prepared an elaborate Korean breakfast spread. Rice, soup, banchan, grilled fish. "Eat," Mrs. Shin insisted, pushing a bowl toward Ayana. "You too skinny. Mr. Kim worry." "Mr. Kim worries about a lot of things," Ayana muttered, but she ate obediently. The food was delicious, and she realized she was starving. As she ate, Mrs. Shin puttered around the kitchen, occasionally checking her phone and typing messages. Finally, she sat across from Ayana and pulled up the translation app. "I have message for you. From your friend May." Ayana's heart leaped. What did she say? Mrs. Shin showed her the phone. The translated message read, Congratulations on your marriage. I can't believe you didn't tell me about him. Call me when you can. I want to hear everything. Love you. Tears pricked Ayana's eyes. May sounded happy, excited, completely unaware that Ayana's marriage was a prison sentence. Can I call her? Ayana asked. Mrs. Shin's expression turned regretful. She typed, Mr. Kim say maybe later. When safer. He worry about connections being traced. Of course. Even this small connection to her old life was being controlled. Ayana pushed her bowl away, suddenly not hungry anymore. Tell me something, Mrs. Shin. Does it ever get easier? Living in this world. Mrs. Shin was quiet for a moment. Then she typed slowly, you learn to find small happiness. Small moments of peace. That is how you survive. You don't wait for big happiness. You collect small pieces. What are your small pieces? Mrs. Shin smiled. She typed, cooking. Flowers. Watching Mr. Kim become less hard than he was. These are my pieces. He's becoming less hard? Yes. Because of you. Mrs. Shin reached across and squeezed Ayana's hand. You remind him he is human. That is good thing. Ayana wasn't sure she believed that, but she appreciated the gesture. The morning crawled by. Ayana tried to read, but couldn't focus. She tried to watch TV, but everything was in Korean. She ended up back in the library, staring at books without seeing them. Around 11, there was a commotion at the front of the compound. Raised voices. The sound of cars. Ayana moved to the window and saw Jae-hoon's Mercedes pulling up, flanked by 2 other vehicles. Jae-hoon got out, and, even from a distance, Ayana could see the tension in his body. He was followed by several of his men, including Min Seo, the one with the scar who clearly hated her. They were arguing about something. Min Seo was gesturing angrily, his face red. Jae-hoon's expression was cold as ice. Then Jae-hoon said something sharp, and Min Seo's hand moved toward his weapon. Ayana's breath caught. Were they going to have a confrontation right there in the driveway? But Jae-hoon moved faster. He grabbed Min Seo's wrist and twisted, forcing him to his knees. The other men drew their weapons, but nobody seemed sure who to point them at. Jae-hoon said something else. Ayana could see his lips moving, and then he released Min Seo and walked away. Min Seo stayed on his knees, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. Ayana backed away from the window, her heart racing. Whatever was happening in Jae-hoon's organization, it was coming to a head. And she was caught right in the middle of it. Jae-hoon found her in the library 10 minutes later. His knuckles were bruised, and there was a hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there this morning. Are you okay? Ayana asked. Fine. He poured himself a drink from the bar cart in the corner. Min Seo is questioning my authority. Thinks marrying you was a sign of weakness. Was it? Jae-hoon downed the drink. Maybe. But it was also necessary. He looked at her. He wants me to end the marriage. Prove that I'm not compromised by having a wife. Ayana's stomach dropped. What did you tell him? I told him that if he questions me again, there will be consequences. Jae-hoon's voice was flat. Then I made the point very clear. You hurt him. He drew on me, Ayana. In front of my men. That's unacceptable in my world. Jae-hoon moved closer. I showed restraint. But that restraint has a cost. Now the others think I'm going soft. Think you're making me weak. Am I? Yes. No hesitation. But I don't care. I'd rather be weak and have you than strong and alone. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Ayana crossed to him, her hands shaking. What happens now? If your men turn on you? Then I fight. And probably lose. He set down his glass. But I'll make sure you're protected first. I've set up accounts in your name. Money. Property. Everything you need to disappear if things go bad. I don't want your money. Ayana stopped herself. You want what? I don't know. She looked at him, this complicated, broken man who'd stolen her life and was now trying to give her a future. I don't know what I want anymore. Jae-hoon's hand came up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the violence he'd just committed. Then let me tell you what I want. I want you to be safe. I want you to find some measure of peace here, if that's even possible. His voice roughened. I want you to look at me someday without fear in your eyes. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. I'm dangerous, Ayana. To everyone around me. Maybe. She leaned into his touch. But you're also the only person in Busan who's trying to keep me alive. That has to count for something. Jae-hoon's eyes searched hers. You're too good for this life. Then give me a different one. I can't. This is all I have. He leaned in, his forehead touching hers. But I can try to make it bearable. I can try to give you small pieces of happiness. Like Mrs. Shin said. You heard that conversation? I hear everything that happens in this compound. His thumb stroked her cheek. And she's right. We can't wait for big happiness. We have to steal the small moments. Is this a small moment? Ayana whispered. This is the biggest moment I've had in years. He kissed her softly. And I'm terrified I'm going to ruin it. Ayana kissed him back, and this time there was no hesitation. No uncertainty. Just two broken people trying to find comfort in each other. When they finally pulled apart, Jae-hoon rested his forehead against hers. I need to ask you something. What? Will you help me end this war? Not with violence, but with strategy. You're smart, Ayana. You see things my men don't see. You could be my advantage. You want me to help you fight the Yakuza? I want you to help me build something better. Something that doesn't require constant bloodshed. His voice was earnest. I want to transition the organization into legitimate business. But I need time. And I need someone I can trust to help me think clearly. Ayana stared at him. You're serious. Completely. You're not just my wife, Ayana. You could be my partner. My equal. If you're willing. It was a choice. A real choice. She could stay a prisoner, locked in this gilded cage. Or she could become something more. Something powerful. It was dangerous. Insane. Probably foolish. But it was also the first real agency she'd had since that night in the rain. Okay, Ayana said. I'll help you. But on one condition. Name it. When this is over, when the war is won and your organization is legitimate, you let me choose. Really choose. To stay or to go. No threats. No manipulation. Just a real choice. Jae-hoon's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then he nodded. When it's over, you can choose. I swear it. They sealed the agreement with a kiss, and Ayana felt the shift between them. She was no longer just his captive. She was becoming his partner. And that was either the smartest or most foolish decision she'd ever made. If your heart is racing right now, hit that subscribe button and comment whether you think Ayana just made a deal with the devil or found her to freedom. The next 3 months transformed Ayana in ways she never could have imagined. Jae-hoon kept his word about making her his partner. Every morning, he brought her into his office and showed her the organization's operations. Not the violence, he still shielded her from that. But the business side. The shipping routes. The real estate holdings. The nightclubs and restaurants that served as fronts. Ayana had a mind for patterns. For numbers. For seeing connections others missed. Within 2 weeks, she'd identified 3 men in Jae-hoon's organization who were stealing funds. Within a month, she'd restructured his shipping operations to be 30% more efficient. The men who'd looked at her with suspicion started looking at her with respect. Even Minesio, his pride still wounded, began to grudgingly accept her presence. But it wasn't just business that changed. Ayana and Jae-hoon changed too. They fell into a rhythm. Coffee together in the mornings. Strategy sessions that turned into actual conversations. Dinners where they talked about everything except the violence surrounding them. Jae-hoon told her about his childhood, the real story behind his scars. Ayana told him about growing up in Atlanta, about her dreams of opening a bakery chain, about the grandmother she never knew. And slowly, carefully, they began to trust each other. A hand on the small of her back as they walked. Fingers intertwining during meetings. Jae-hoon pulling her close at night, seeking comfort. Ayana resting her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling safe for the first time since the accident. The tension between them grew sweeter. Less desperate. More like anticipation than dread. 3 months and 2 days after the wedding, everything changed again. Ayana woke feeling nauseous. She'd been tired for weeks, chalking it up to stress and the long hours she was working. But this was different. This was urgent. She barely made it to the bathroom in time. Jae-hoon appeared in the doorway, his hair messy from sleep, concern etched across his face. Ayana. I'm fine. She was sick again. Something I ate. But Jae-hoon's expression had gone very still. When was your last cycle? Ayana's blood went cold. She tried to remember. Weeks ago. Maybe longer. She'd been so consumed with learning Jae-hoon's world that she hadn't paid attention. I don't know, she whispered. Jae-hoon's hand tightened on the doorframe. We need to get you tested. But we never. Ayana's mind raced. How is this possible? The wedding night. Jae-hoon's voice was rough. When we kissed. When we got close. We didn't, but it was close enough that he ran his hand through his hair. I thought I was careful. Ayana's world tilted. She might be carrying Jae-hoon's child. A child conceived in a marriage born of coercion and violence. Mrs. Shin drove them to a private clinic an hour later. Jae-hoon held Ayana's hand the entire way, his grip almost painful. At the clinic, a doctor who clearly owed Jae-hoon a favor ran the tests quickly and discreetly. When the doctor returned, her expression was carefully neutral. Congratulations, Mrs. Kim. You're approximately 10 weeks along. The room spun. 10 weeks. That tracked with the timeline. Jae-hoon's face had gone pale. Is she healthy? Is everything healthy? Both seem fine. But Mrs. Kim will need regular monitoring. This can be complicated, especially with stress. The doctor looked at Ayana kindly. Do you have any questions? Ayana couldn't speak. Couldn't think. She was going to have a baby. Jae-hoon's baby. In a marriage that might end in disaster. Jae-hoon thanked the doctor and led Ayana back to the car. They drove in silence for 20 minutes before he finally pulled over on a quiet overlook above the city. Say something, he said quietly. Please. I don't know what to say. Ayana's hands went to her still flat stomach. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were so careful. Not careful enough. Jae-hoon turned to face her. Ayana, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a father. My own father was terrible. What if You're not him. Ayana surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. You're nothing like him. How can you know that? Because he wouldn't have cared if I was scared. Wouldn't have slept on the couch. Wouldn't have given me choices. Ayana took his hand. You're not perfect, Jae-hoon. You've done terrible things. But you're trying to be better. That's more than he ever did. Jae-hoon's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. What do you want to do? About the baby? What do you mean? He took a shaky breath. If you don't want this, I'll understand. I'll take you to whatever clinic you want. I'll make sure you're safe and cared for. It's your choice, Ayana. Completely yours. The fact that he was offering her a choice, a real choice, made Ayana's heart ache. 3 months ago, he would have demanded she keep it. Would have used the baby as another chain to bind her to him. But this Jae-hoon was different. Softer. More human. Ayana looked out at the city spread below them. Busan. This city that had become her prison and somehow, impossibly, her home. She thought about the baby growing inside her. Jae-hoon's child. Her child. She should be terrified. Should want to run. Should demand options. But when she searched her heart, she found something unexpected. Hope. I want to keep it, she said quietly. Jae-hoon's hand tightened on hers. Are you sure? No. I'm not sure about anything. Ayana turned to face him. But I'm choosing this anyway. I'm choosing us. Whatever that means. Jae-hoon pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I'll protect you both. I swear it. No matter what happens with the Yakuza, with my organization, with anything, you and this baby will be safe. We're in this together now, Ayana murmured against his chest. For real this time. Not because you forced me. Because I'm choosing it. They sat there for a long time, holding each other as the sun set over Busan. When they finally drove back to the compound, something fundamental had shifted between them. That night, Jae-hoon didn't sleep on the couch. Ayana pulled him into bed beside her, and they lay together, his hand resting protectively on her stomach. I love you, Jae-hoon whispered into the darkness. I know I have no right to say it. I know you might never feel the same. But I need you to know. You and this baby, you're everything to me now. Ayana's breath caught. She waited for the anger, the resentment, the urge to throw his words back at him. But it didn't come. Instead, she felt something warm and terrifying unfurl in her chest. I don't know if I love you yet, she said honestly. But I think I'm starting to. And that scares me more than anything else in this world. Me too. Jae-hoon's arms tightened around her. Me too. The war with the Yakuza continued. Minacio eventually made his move, trying to stage a takeover. But Ayana had seen it coming, had helped Jae-hoon prepare. Minacio was removed from power and the organization consolidated under Jae-hoon's control. 6 months later, Ayana gave birth. Not to one baby, but to twins. A boy and a girl, both healthy and beautiful. Jae-hoon held his daughter and cried. Ayana held their son and felt something break open inside her. This was real now. They were a family. Broken and complicated and born from chaos, but a family nonetheless. They named the boy Kai, meaning victory. The girl, Amara, meaning eternal. 2 years after that night in the rain, Ayana stood on the balcony of their bedroom, watching Jae-hoon play with the twins in the garden below. He was gentle with them, patient in a way she never would have believed possible. He'd kept his promise about transitioning the organization into legitimate businesses. The violence had decreased. The danger had lessened. They weren't free, not completely. They probably never would be. But they'd built something together. Something real. Mrs. Shin appeared beside Ayana with tea. You are happy? She asked in her careful English. Ayana thought about the question. Was she happy? She'd been kidnapped. Forced into marriage. Threatened and trapped and terrified. She'd lost her freedom and her old life. But she'd gained something too. A partner who saw her. Children who needed her. A purpose that went beyond just surviving day to day. I'm happy, Ayana said, and realized it was true. Not the way I imagined. Not the way I would have chosen. But happy anyway. Mrs. Shin smiled. Small pieces of happiness. They add up. Yes. Ayana watched Jae-hoon lift Kai onto his shoulders while Amara demanded her turn. They really do. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Jae-hoon found Ayana in their bedroom. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to her. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside was a passport. An American passport in her name. And plane tickets to Atlanta. Open-ended. No return date. Ayana's hands shook. Jae-hoon. The war is over. The organization is stable. I'm as legitimate as I'm ever going to be. Jae-hoon took her hands. I promised you a choice when this was done. Stay or go. No threats. No manipulation. This is that choice, Ayana. Tears blurred Ayana's vision. You're really giving me this option? I'm giving you the freedom I took from you. His voice cracked. If you want to take the twins and go back to Atlanta, I won't stop you. I'll set you up with everything you need. You'll never have to worry about money or safety. You can build the life you should have had. And you. I'll let you go. Jae-hoon's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Because I love you enough to give you what you need. Even if what you need is to be free of me. Ayana looked at the passport. The tickets. Her ticket to freedom. Everything she dreamed about for 2 years. Then she looked at Jae-hoon. This man who'd stolen her life, and then spent 2 years trying to give it back. Who'd learned to be gentle for her. Who'd become a father their children adored. Who'd transformed from a monster into something complicated and human and worth loving. She tore up the tickets. I'm staying, she said. Ayana. I'm staying because I choose to. Not because I'm trapped. Not because I'm afraid. Because this, she gestured to the compound, to their life, to him. This is my home now. You're my home. And I don't want to leave. Jae-hoon pulled her into his arms, and they both cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. From the knowledge that what they'd built together was real enough to survive even freedom. I love you, Ayana whispered. I never thought I'd say that to you. But I do. I love you. I love you too. Jae-hoon kissed her softly. Thank you for choosing me. For choosing us. That night, they held each other close, both of them grateful for the impossible journey that had brought them here. It was tender and real and perfect. And when morning came, they woke up together, ready to face whatever came next. The next morning, Ayana woke to find Jae-hoon already up, standing on the balcony with Kai in his arms. The little boy was pointing at the ocean, babbling happily. Amara was still asleep in her crib, her thumb in her mouth. Ayana joined them on the balcony, slipping her hand into Jae-hoon's free one. Together, they watched the sun rise over Busan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Do you regret it?" Jae-hoon asked quietly. "That night in the rain? The accident that brought you here?" Ayana thought about all the pain, all the fear, all the impossible choices. But she also thought about Kai and Amara, about the strength she'd discovered in herself, about the love she'd found in the most unlikely place. Every day, she said honestly, "But I don't regret where it led. I don't regret us." Jae-hoon kissed her temple. "Neither do I." They stood there as a family, watching the dawn break over their complicated, beautiful, hard-won life. It wasn't the fairy tale Ayana had dreamed of as a girl, but it was real. It was theirs. And that was enough. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now because there are more stories like this coming. Drop a comment telling me what you thought of Ayana and Jae-hoon's journey. And smash that like button if you believe that even the darkest beginnings can lead to beautiful endings. Thank you for staying until the end. This is just the beginning of their story and yours with this channel. See you in the next one.